We are Anka. Stay tuned for updated real news.
Hello, Anka Daily News viewers. We continue to share with you important developments in the shadow of the war. The ongoing conflict in the Ukrainian territory is deeply affecting not only the physical dimensions of the war, but also military strategies and morale on the ground. Some recent events in particular have led to an increase in worrying signals on the Russian front. Unexpected developments on the front have started to cause serious unrest within the Russian army. The disturbances that have been spreading among Russian soldiers for some time have led to various problems related to the war becoming more visible. The increase in casualties, strategic mistakes, and the recent intensification of attacks have pushed the soldiers' endurance to its limits. At the same time, Russian fighters and authors on the ground have begun to speak out. Of course, there were those who predicted from the beginning that Russia would face massive resistance, but what's happening now shows the tremors on the Russian front are much deeper. In particular, the rising complaints from within Russia reveal the extent to which the military strategies of the war are being questioned. When we look at recent developments, the increase in casualties and attacks behind the front lines indicate a significant break in military discipline and the course of the war. Could the revolt of Russian soldiers be a critical turning point for the future of the war? We'll examine this in more detail in the coming minutes. Before moving on to our report, here's a small reminder. As the Anka Daily News team, we strive to bring you the developments in the Russia-Ukraine war. So don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We also read all the comments you leave on our videos. Please continue to share your ideas about our content. Tell us what you'd like to see on the Anka Daily News channel. Let's start if you're ready. Anka Daily News reports. The story of Goodwin and Ernest is a striking example of the deep cracks in the Russian army and the internal problems caused by the war. The 87th Regiment, led by the two soldiers, was known as a unit specializing in drones and combat missions. Since the beginning of the war, this unit had participated in critical operations in the field and had successfully neutralized many important targets. However, despite its successful operations, the unit's fate was completely changed by the decision of a newly appointed commander. The commander disbanded the team, confiscating their equipment and severely restricting the unit's aid and support channels to the outside world. Goodwin had been stationed on Ukrainian soil since the beginning of the war as a prominent leader of the 87th Regiment. With Ernest at his side, he commanded the drone unit, known as one of the most effective units in the army. This unit had played a critical role in the detection of strategic targets, reconnaissance operations, and attacks on enemy lines. However, when the new commander intervened and changed the entire operation, the fate of the unit took a negative turn. The new commander disbanded this special unit where Goodwin and his colleagues had achieved great success, confiscating their equipment. He also restricted the unit's support channels, leaving them in a logistical difficulty. This was a major blow not only to military strategy but also to morale and motivation. Goodwin and Ernest were a cohesive group of soldiers who'd strengthened their bonds, but this radical change crippled the unit's operational capabilities. The special unit led by Goodwin and Ernest also faced the threat of friendly fire. Unmanned aerial vehicles were used to carry out important reconnaissance missions on the battlefield. However, in the chaotic environment of war, there was always the risk of being shot down by friendly forces. Indeed, Goodwin and Ernest's unit was exposed to this danger. Just before the drones were shot down by friendly fire, the team managed to identify important targets. These targets were strategic points that could affect the course of the war. After their unmanned aerial vehicle was shot down, Goodwin and Ernest got together and prepared for another attack. This time the target was Lesovka. However, the events that unfolded during this mission once again exposed the confusion and mismanagement within the Russian military. Despite being equipped with new equipment, the attack on Lesovka left the team in a difficult situation. Communication problems, inadequate logistical support, and poor strategic decisions all contributed to the failure of the attack. On September 13th, the group led by Goodwin and Ernest suddenly disappeared. Although it's not known exactly what happened during the attack, military reports indicate that the group hadn't been heard from. This disappearance shows the extent of the lack of discipline and coordination in the Russian military. The attack on Lesovka further undermined the morale of the Russian troops and highlighted the uncertainty of the situation at the front. Goodwin and Ernest's experience were in fact a small part of a wider problem in the Russian army. Recently, Russian soldiers have begun to make serious complaints, particularly about tactics known as meat attacks. These attacks are known as operations that have a very high number of casualties, and there's insufficient preparation. Meat attacks have caused great dissatisfaction among Russian soldiers since the beginning of the war. In particular, the rapid increase in casualties has led to threats of mutiny among the soldiers. Russian soldiers say that such operations rely solely on manpower and that they are deployed without adequate logistical and air support. Meat attacks are among the tactics that result in heavy casualties for soldiers sent directly to the battlefield. The team led by Goodwin and Ernest was also subjected to these tactics and suffered heavy casualties. Inadequate equipment, poor management decisions, and strategies that jeopardized the lives of soldiers led to deep unrest within the Russian army. Since the beginning of the war, Russia has attempted to seize Ukraine by launching major military operations. However, recent losses and mistakes in military strategy show how far away this goal is. Russian soldiers now feel there's no longer just a part of this war, but are engaged in a fight for their own lives. In particular, the rapid decline in morale on the ground and growing complaints among the troops pose a serious threat to the future of the Russian army. The story of Goodwin and Ernest clearly reveals the issues within the Russian army and the challenges brought by the war. These two soldiers, who achieved success after success as leaders of the drone unit, lost their lives due to poor strategic decisions and insufficient logistical support. The losses caused by drone attacks have created significant unrest among Russian soldiers. The rapid decline in morale on the field poses great risks for the army's future operations as well. What do you think? Do you think the Russian army will continue with the meat attacks? Will these attacks lead to mutiny within the Russian army? Let us know in the comments. We read and care about your opinions.